In the latest issue of Cricket Fanatics magazine, we spoke about coaching in South Africa. Now, I thought that this will be a very important topic to discuss further as we're going to continue the theme of Cricket Fanatics magazine. You guys can go ahead and download the latest issue. You can see all the signs in the description for you guys to go and click. And the latest issue is obviously about coaching in South Africa. And we went quite in depth with regards to this topic. But we're going to continue this conversation on this new edition of the Daily Show. We're going to be talking about the coach and the player relationship. Now, there have been many coaches in South African cricket that we can speak about, but there's also been some excellent captains. We've got the likes of Graeme Smith, we've got the likes of AB de Villiers, we've got the likes of Faf du Plessis, Hansie Cronje, Sean Pollock, even Hashim Amla, instance that he was captain. So there's a lot to talk about on this particular show, but we want to talk about the power between the coach and the captain, what their relationships are like, how important those relationships are. That's what we're going to be speaking about on today's show. So we're looking forward to this discussion. We're going to be having Zaahier Adams on the show as well as Aditya. So all of that next. Hey guys, welcome to Cricket Fanatics magazine. This is your daily show. I'm your host Khalid. This is my co-host Aditya, and we're welcomed by Zaahier Adams today, and we're hoping that we're going to have an excellent discussion about this particular topic. Welcome to the show, Zaahier. Great to see you again. Very excited about this one.
How's it, Khalid? How's it, Aditya? Nice to be back on Cricket Fanatics.
Welcome, Zaahier. Good to see you.
Yeah. Always fun.
Nice. Looking good. Looking healthy. I'm glad about that.
Yes, we try. We do try.
Yeah, no, this is an important discussion because we want to continue the theme of coaching in South Africa. Now, we had some excellent articles in the latest issue from Dion Bottas and Robin Peterson and the likes of Gary Kirsten in previous issues to be speaking about coaching in South Africa as well. And we just thought that this topic would be something that we really need to get your insight on because, I mean, your experience as a journalist counts for a hell of a lot because you would have seen coaches and players and captains in a different light to how the general fan sees them. And you'll get insights. Like I spoke last night on the issue about Faf du Plessis and why he should come back. And I gave some experiences of my experience with him in interviews as well as in the press conferences and what he was like with us as people, as journalists compared to other personalities in cricket. But let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about some of the captains that South Africa has had and their relationship with the coaches. Can you give us some insight into that, Zaahier, and how it has developed, how those relationships have developed and the influence of captains have developed over the years leading up to Faf du Plessis as well?
So the Graeme Smith tenure is one that is best described as South African cricket because he went through a number of coaches. He started with Eric Simons in 2000 and that was kind of his father figure. And Eric was basically had guided him along the way. And then after that, you know, Jared Jennings came aboard, and that was a match made in hell. It did give birth to the careers of Dale Steyn and AB de Villiers and also Hashim Amla, but in terms of the way the team was working, it was never going to work with Graeme, who was trying to stamp his authority, you know, on the Proteas team and basically lead the team after Sean Pollock. And with somebody as strong as Ray Jennings, that was always going to clash. And that's why South African cricket got in a guy like Mickey Arthur. He hadn't coached a major team. He'd basically been with Griquas and the Warriors for a short period of time. And he also hadn't played international cricket. So he was quite content to be in the background and let Graeme basically front up, not only on the field in the new ball, but also in the dressing room and also at press conferences. Graeme did lots of media work. He was the one that took a lot upon his shoulders. And it was also a strategy, the way they used to go to Australia, where Graeme would... he would just front up and make the big statements and allow basically Mickey just to get on with his work. You know, that was that relationship. It was the basis of their relationship. But as time progressed, as the team, and it worked, South Africa was the most successful during that period. And it worked for a long time until Graham was quite keen to take the team to the new level, to the next level. And a guy like Jeremy Snape, who was the mental conditioning coach, as he believed that, as we know, South African cricket and Adiata and his Indian subscribers love joking about the choking issue in South African cricket, bringing up that all the time. And he thought that Jeremy Snape was going to add that value to the team. But South African cricket thought otherwise, and they got Corey van Zyl, who was the former bowling coach. They got him as a coach to the 2011 World Cup, and that too was a prickly situation because, as we know, Mark Boucher was dropped for that 2011 World Cup, and everything that went along with that, as we found out recently at these SJN hearings, how close that team was. And so again, South Africa cricket was at a crossroads between who do we let go? Who's the important one, the coach or the captain? Who holds the power? And as we know, that coaches come and go, but it's hard to find an opening batsman and a captain with broad shoulders as Graeme Smith. And that's when Gary Kirsten was brought into the team, and he just led India to that World Cup victory in at home, and he was riding the wave of success. He could have taken any team in the world. He could have retired there and then, but he returned home, and the crucial element of that relationship, that coaching captain relationship, was that, remember, Gary and Graham had actually opened the batting together for a long period of time for South Africa, and they fought, and also when Graham had come to Western Province initially, along with Eric, Gaza had kind of taken Graham under his wing, and they've developed a really good relationship, and the relationship was based on one where basically the Graham and a core group of senior players back in those days. Remember, the guys had played all three formats. You'd play one-day cricket, you'd play T20 cricket, you'd play Test cricket, and the calendar was just immense, and they would and they'd be on the road for a long time, and Gary kind of brought a different perspective to how the team was going to train. There was a thing called optional training, which came into the South African team. They would have, when they arrived, they would have a lengthy session the very first day. It was the longest practice ever. Basically, we carried on for 4 hours. And for the rest of the week, if you wanted to practice or not, you didn't have to, and that kind of suited the team at the time, because there were an older generation of players, guys like Hashim, Jacques, Dale. They kind of knew what they had to do, if you know what I'm saying. They could manage their games, and Gary became more of a man manager than an actual coach, and that. And Aditya can come in here. It was a similar thing with that Indian side with Sachin and how he got the best out of guys like Dravid and Lakshman and Dale would go off and surf in Sri Lanka. He'd go with Paddy Upton, and so his entire coaching style was to keep these older players mentally fresh for the games. Mentally fresh and obviously physically fresh. Basically to allow them. He gave them the space to explore different avenues within the game, and Graham was quite fond of that coach-captain relationship, because the team was mature enough to understand it. It wasn't this young side that Mark Boucher has now, where you actually have to coach and you actually have to give them the game plans and structure the formulas around getting them better. These guys knew what they wanted to do. So a coach-captain relationship is an evolving one. The dynamic changes all the time. So with again the Gary and Graham situation, was Graham wanted to retire. He was going to retire, and Gary actually asked him to stay on because they would create an environment where they could flourish. And they did. They went up on. They climbed the Alps in Switzerland ahead of an England tour. They did things that they've never ever done. They went yacht sailing in Christchurch in Dunedin. They did all these strange things away from the cricket field, but it actually helped them become a better cricket side. because their skills were intact. It doesn't work with all coaches and captains, as we can currently see with this young team that Mark Boucher has.
Now, in the SIN meeting, something came out about Faf du Plessis with regards to the way he's basically taken in the whole factor of the way South Africa is as a nation, the Ubuntu mentality, he brought into the concept of what South Africa needs as a captain. And he's been in a difficult situation because he's had a couple of different coaches in the time that he's been captain. We had obviously Russell Domingo, we had Ikson as well. Now we have Mark Boucher. So with regards to that, and I want to ask you, Zai, because you would have seen the entire period of Faf du Plessis' captaincy, and you'll be able to compare it directly to what it was like under Graham. So when we're talking from that, what do you think that someone like Themba Bavuma can learn from a guy like Faf, and what made Faf such a special captain?
Khalid, you must realize that the individual personalities are also different. That is a major aspect of captaincy. Captaincy is it's a leadership thing. It's something that you trust your instincts, who you are intrinsically as a person. That comes to the fore as a captain. And with Faf, he'd grown up, and I say grown up, he came into the team with Graham basically at the peak of his powers. Within that side, his debut was saving a series in Australia where they won the second consecutive series, and he also grew up. Also, when he was young, like really young, he grew up with South Africa getting hiding from Australia. It was something that was, you'd wake up at 2:00 in the morning and you'd see Australia 400 for 3, with Langer and Hayden on double hundreds and stuff. So he had that innate need or desire to want to. So what's Alex? I'll basically give you something. I'll entertain you for a bit here. What was Alex Ferguson when he started at Manchester United? It was about knocking Liverpool off his perch. Isn't that how he started? So that was kind of was Faf's mantra, that he wanted to put South Africa on the pedestal of Australia. He wanted to topple Australia and get Australia and South Africa to that perch, and sustain that legacy that Graham had started. So that was something that was very dear to him, and we saw through his battles. But when it came to the coaches' relationship, he had a very good relationship with Russell Domingo. They understood that the team needed to move forward and needed to move on. So if you remember, Russell had dropped. He'd actually dropped Graham Smith from the one-day team, which forced him to retire because Quinton de Kock. He wanted Quinton de Kock to open the batting, which also settled the issue of AB's back, whether he could keep or not, because Quinton could. Quinton was he would keep, and that basically was the end of Graham Smith's one-day career. It was equally the same with Jacques Kallis. Faf at the opening partnership was Quinton de Kock and Hashim Amla, and Faf was going to bat at 3 after he scored those hundreds in Zimbabwe against Australia. He had a big series there, so he was going to bat at 3. AB de Villiers at 4, JP de Villiers at 5. Where was Jacques Kallis going to bat? And that was a big call that they had to make together, and AB was still captain at the time, but the simple thing was that Jacques Kallis had to move on, and that call was made with AB as captain, and then Faf, continuing it through after he took over. And those are big calls that coaches and captains need to be on the same page with in terms of where they want to take the side. And that was with Russell Domingo. Where Faf wanted to take the team, coming through to Otis Gibson, and we all know their obsession with fast bowling. They had an absolute. They love fast bowlers during that period where it was Test cricket, where it was one-day cricket. If South Africa could pick 5 fast bowlers, Keshav Hardley, he was lucky to get the game. We played on tracks where by the third afternoon we were down at Camps Bay already. If there was a Newlands Test match, that was, and that was Otis and Faf. They shared that passion, and it was ultimately to the death knell of them both. Considering the way they went to the World Cup. They were banking on Dale Steyn, they were banking on KG Rabada, Lingini Gidi's fitness, Andrik Nortje. And it kind of, backfired when those guys weren't fit. There wasn't really a plan B. So, but they were on the same page. And that was something that, that was instrumental to Faf and Otis. But the point that I want to make in reference to Faf understanding South Africa, I actually believe that he actually needed to go to India to understand South Africa, because he went to the Chennai Super Kings where he learned a lot under MS Dhoni at CSK, and he also learned the value of being in a multi-national squad, so to say, in terms of what players would judge purely on their abilities, that, you take away everything else that people look at cricketers with in South Africa, and you look at purely their abilities. And that's what CSK kind of taught Faf, that, that it's purely a cricketer's ability on the pitch that will define him. And that stripped away a lot of possibly what he had grown up with, and it was inculcated in him by the South African system. And he came back from CSK with a very open mind and a very outlook on the world, and also cricket, that of how he wanted to take the South African team. And to him it was, from then onwards, if you were good enough, you were going to play. And that was a big cultural shift in that side, and in the thinking of the captain, who wasn't looking at his mates and his, and who he wanted in the team. It was purely, if you were good enough, you would play. And guys like Robin Peterson, they thrived in that environment, and as they went forward, and and other cricketers as well. JP found a new lease of life later onwards, and the way Temba can take from that is that he needs to understand what is for the best for the team. What is going to make South African cricket stronger? If that means that he doesn't even play at times, due to the structure of the team or whatever, then those calls need to be made. But that is what Faf took forward, and something that Temba can take, that he needs to make decisions that are best for the side and not necessarily always for himself going forward.
Zaahier, earlier in the conversation, you talked about the infamous C word, the Joker's tag that is unfortunately haunted South Africa time and again. And I was wondering that, with Graeme Smith's personality, the 2007 World Cup and the 2011 World Cup would have been tournaments that he would have loved to make a statement, given the quality of the team. And I was just wondering if you could provide any insight on the fact that up until that point, Herschel Gibbs probably had the best record of all South Africans in World Cups. And I suppose to his detriment, his book was published at the wrong time. But, I was wondering, what would have gone on? Because in the 2011 World Cup, if Herschel Gibbs had been opening the batting, it may have been a different story for South Africa. So what could you tell us about that?
The situation around Herschel was always an individual. Let's put it like that. He was always an individual. And in South African sport, and you can speak to Khalid, basically from the entire system, so majority of these sportsmen, whether they're cricketers or rugby, they come from these boys' school environments, and it's a lot to do with the team, about the team, and we do things a certain way, and there's a formula to it, and guys who generally don't fit, who don't subscribe to that. They're not part of the group and the clique and all of those type of things, and that gets inculcated from schoolboys already. From school, it's the South African system, And Herschel was from schoolboy system already. He was always prone to pull his own way. Whether that was always good for him is a different question altogether. But that was how he was. And when the difference with Herschel though was he was extremely passionate about playing for South Africa. He was unbelievably passionate about it, and also the laissez-faire attitude that was a perception that people had of him was completely untrue. He possibly worked harder than any other cricketer that you know, because he knew that sport was his life. Sport was his one and only meal ticket. And he put everything into it, whichever sport he chose. People speak about AB de Villiers being able to play anything and everything. Herschel Gibbs could be a pro golfer, he could be a pro tennis player, he could be whatever. He had trials at Arsenal when he was 12 years old. You know, so he could do whatever he wanted, but he did know that sport was his ticket. There was no other option. There was no other career. So he was extremely passionate about it, and people somehow forgot that, and they overlooked that when he walked onto that field, how he wanted to do well for South Africa, and I think his frustration was that, you know, we're winning all these bilateral series and we dominate these things. But when we get to the major tournaments, when the lights are really on, then these so-called big names of South African cricket disappear. And that was kind of frustrating. And unfortunately, there wasn't a management. I mean, I think if I look at a guy like Herschel, possibly within that England setup, I don't know whether he's confined to Owen Morgan's rules, and we can ask Alex Hales about that. But but in terms of the way they played the cricket, the way they were backed, the support they had, in that regard, I think Herschel always cried out for that. He wanted that he was actually a senior player in that side. And because he didn't speak as much as the other guys, or he didn't, that wasn't afforded to him. But if you took purely on his record and his ability, Herschel should have been one of the senior guys of the side, and because he never accepted responsibility in the way people wanted him to, and that was off the field. It was confused with what he did on the field. And Herschel, I mean, his record at in the 2003 World Cup at home, he was basically the second highest run scored in the tournament, despite South Africa losing, going home in the group stages. At the 2007 World Cup, he batted number 3 in 2006. In 2006 in the 438 game, he got 175, but yet he batted number 4, number 5 in 2007. So how does so surely you should have been somebody that you're saying, I'm building my team around this guy. This is the guy that I'm going to build my team around. But instead, that was always afforded to Jacques Kallis, because it was stability. It was you knew what you were going to get. You always knew what you were going to get with Jacques. So South Africa chose to build a team around Jacques. Not that wasn't going to be successful. It wasn't, but Herschel always craved that. That was something that Herschel craved, that he wanted to be the center stage. That is what Herschel was about. When you told him that he was the best, and that he was, and that you trusting him, and that's when you got the best out of him. And unfortunately, there weren't many coaches who could consistently do that. And I think if Gary Kirsten was South Africa's coach at the 2011 World Cup, Herschel would have played, because Gazza was one of the few guys that understood Hirsch. He understood how his mind worked, and if you look at their record as an opening partnership, whether it's Test cricket or one-day cricket, it's up there with the very best. And Hirsch was never part of that clique. He was never part of that of that group of players, that because he didn't have issues drinking alone. Let's put it like that. The real pity that Hirsch wasn't at the 2011 World Cup. I belong to a group where his father is a colleague of mine, and his father actually just posted a picture of him fielding in the Premier League that he's coaching now. So he's still at the age of almost 50. He's still physically fit enough to do that. A few years ago, he tried a comeback for the Cobras, if I'm not mistaken, and he played a few club games, and he got hundreds, and and he really wanted to work his way back into franchise cricket at over 40 years old, because that's how much he loves it, and it wasn't meant to be. But definitely agree with you, Aditya, that Herschel gives the 2011 World Cup, could possibly was a difference.
So, guys, that's all we have time for today. Thank you a lot, Zaahier, for coming on the show. I hope you guys got some insight into a coach and player relationship, as well as coach and captain relationship, but also some insight into some of the stories of the past that we really want to hear and take insight from, because it will give you guys insight into so many topics that we spoke about in this issue of the magazine. So, guys, you know what you have to do. Download the latest issue of the magazine. The link is on the screen and in the description. It's 100% free, all the back issues as well. So go ahead and download the latest issue of the magazine and get your monthly dose of everything in South African cricket. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you again tomorrow with another daily show. Take care.